My name is Melanie, I'm 54, and I discovered my husband was cheating in a luxury hotel, so I booked the room next door. Before I tell you about how I walked in on him with his mistress, and brought her husband with me, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I stood there, heart pounding against my ribs, outside room 402, at the Grand Plaza Hotel in New York. My hand trembled, holding the keycard to room 403. Laughter, his laughter, echoed from behind the door, seeping through the thin wall, twisting like a knife in my gut. My face was set, a bitter grimace I couldn't quite hide. How could a woman, 54 years old, who had dedicated nearly 3 decades to a marriage, find herself in such a preposterous situation? In 28 years of marriage, I'd been the perfect wife. Now, I was a reluctant detective, a stalker, and a woman on the verge of breakdown. But tonight, everything was about to change. This wasn't the end of me. This was the start of my freedom. For so long, I had believed in a fairy tale. I was a young woman, fresh out of college, with dreams of traveling the world, learning every language imaginable. But then Robert came along. He was charming, ambitious, and convinced me that our life together, building a family, was the greatest adventure of all. I shelved my aspirations, happily trading my passport for a spatula, my dictionaries for diaper bags. I became the silent backbone of our home, meticulously managing everything from the household budget to our children's college funds. While Robert climbed the corporate ladder, securing promotions and a hefty salary, I was the quiet force behind his success. He'd often dismiss my contributions, saying, "You just take care of the home, Mel. That's enough." It was a subtle erosion of my value, a slow bleed I barely noticed until it was too late. The past few years, the silence in our sprawling suburban house had become deafening. Robert was always busy, late nights at the office, business trips, golfing with clients. I'd cook elaborate dinners, only to eat alone, staring at the empty chair across the table. When I'd suggest a weekend getaway, or even just a quiet evening together, he'd brush me off. "Melanie, you're overthinking it. I'm just tired." I became a ghost in my own life, a silent observer of a marriage that was slowly, painfully dying. The ache of loneliness was a constant companion. Then came the morning I found his phone. He'd left it on the kitchen counter, notifications flashing. A text message popped up, innocent enough at first. "Can't wait for our romantic weekend, Robert. Missing you already. Sarah." My blood ran cold. My hands started to tremble so violently, I almost dropped the phone. Sarah. The name echoed in my head. Who was Sarah? My initial shock quickly morphed into a cold, calculated resolve. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I had spent years meticulously organizing our lives, managing complex schedules, and handling every detail of our finances. That meticulousness, that hidden skill for detail, became my secret weapon. I started digging. I checked his call history, scrolled through his messages when he was asleep, painstakingly cross-referenced his calendar with credit card statements. Each piece of information was like a tiny shard of glass, cutting deeper. I found more messages, more clandestine meetings. The affair wasn't new, it had been going on for at least 8 months. And there was a vague mention of Sarah having a complicated situation with her own husband. That detail, that one tiny breadcrumb, stuck with me. This wasn't just about Robert's betrayal, it was about a whole network of deceit, and I was going to unravel it. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. This was about reclaiming the pieces of myself he had so carelessly discarded. The evidence mounted, undeniable and sickening. Robert and Sarah were planning a romantic weekend getaway at the Grand Plaza Hotel in New York. A luxury hotel, no less. He'd probably used our joint account. The audacity. My initial grief twisted into a fierce, unwavering anger. I called an old friend, Brenda, who'd been a general manager at a luxury hotel for years. I spun a plausible story, a white lie about wanting to surprise Robert for our anniversary, and managed to get the room number, 402. Then, with Brenda's help, I secured room 403, right next door. A part of me, the old Melanie, screamed at the absurdity of it all. But the new Melanie, the one forged in betrayal, was calm, focused. I packed a small bag, just the essentials. No fancy clothes, no makeup to hide the storm raging inside me. Just simple, functional items. As I boarded the train to New York, I felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. This wasn't a vacation, it was a mission. Stepping into the grand lobby of the Grand Plaza, I felt utterly out of place. This opulent world was where Robert chose to betray me, not in our quiet home. I saw them immediately. Robert, smiling, holding hands with a woman noticeably younger than me, beautiful in a way that screamed new, exciting, forbidden. It was Sarah. My stomach clenched, a cold knot of dread. I watched them disappear into the elevator, my eyes burning. Then, I took a deep breath, walked to the reception, and checked into my room. The keycard for 403 felt heavy in my hand, a silent promise of what was to come. I wasn't just checking into a hotel room, I was checking into a new chapter of my life. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about me, and about finally saying no to being undervalued. The sound started subtle at first, muffled laughter, the murmur of voices. Then, the unmistakable creak of the bed, the intimate sounds that made my skin crawl. I sat in my small, impersonal hotel room, listening. Every laugh, every whispered word, was a fresh stab to my heart. But I didn't break. I clutched a small notebook, jotting down every detail, every agonizing sound. This was my proof, my raw, unfiltered truth. It was excruciating, but I needed to feel it, to face it head-on. At one point, I felt a hot flash crawl up my neck. I just stared at the wall, the phone felt heavy in my hand. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to get through this. In the dead of night, unable to sleep, I slipped out of my room, needing air, needing to escape the suffocating closeness of their betrayal. As I stood in the deserted hallway, leaning against my door, I saw him. A man, roughly my age, standing silently outside room 401, his face etched with a familiar despair. Our eyes met, and in that instant, a silent understanding passed between us. He was Julian, Sarah's husband. He introduced himself, his voice gravelly with exhaustion. I knew she was seeing someone, he admitted. I hired a private investigator a few weeks ago. I just needed to catch her in the act. My heart ached for him, for us. We went back to my room, the sanctuary where shared pain could finally breathe. We talked for hours, exchanging stories of betrayal, of feeling invisible in our own marriages. Julian listened to me, truly listened, something Robert hadn't done in years. He praised my strength, my courage to come here alone. He made me feel seen, appreciated, desirable even. There was an undeniable spark, a connection forged in shared heartache. He had concrete evidence, photos, detailed reports from his PI. This was the missing piece to my puzzle. We spent the rest of the afternoon planning our next move, a silent pact formed between two strangers united by a common wound. The air crackled with a strange mix of pain and potent anticipation. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at something new. The Grand Plaza's restaurant was a symphony of soft jazz, clinking silverware, and hushed conversations. The perfect setting for a romantic dinner, or, in our case, a very public execution. Robert and Sarah sat at a corner table, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, looking utterly oblivious to the storm about to break. They looked comfortable, too comfortable, laughing and sharing an intimacy that once belonged to me. Julian and I entered, walking with an almost synchronized stride, an unspoken agreement in our every movement. We chose a table strategically, just far enough to appear nonchalant, but close enough to be impossible to ignore. Robert's eyes flickered our way, then did a double take. His smile faltered. Sarah, sensing his unease, looked up, and her eyes widened in horror. The color drained from her face. I rose from my seat, slowly, deliberately. Julian followed, a slim folder clutched in his hand. I walked towards their table, my heart pounding, but my face a mask of calm resolve. Robert started to stand, a confused, angry question forming on his lips. I cut him off, my voice clear, steady, cutting through the restaurant's quiet hum. "Hello, Robert. I think we need to talk." Sarah gasped, pressing her hand to her mouth. I looked directly into Robert's eyes, then shifted my gaze to Sarah. And what's truly fascinating is, I didn't come here alone. I've had quite an enlightening afternoon with Julian here, Sarah's husband. Julian stepped forward, placing the folder on their table, deliberately opening it to reveal a stack of photos, texts, and dates. "These are the details of Sarah and Robert's arrangement," Julian stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet carrying immense weight. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Robert's face twisted from confusion to outrage, then to utter humiliation. He tried to grab my arm, but I recoiled. Sarah started to sob. "No. This isn't. It's not what it looks like." But her words were drowned out by the rising murmurs of other diners. The public humiliation was absolute. Robert was beet red, stammering, unable to form a coherent sentence. His powerful executive demeanor had crumbled, replaced by a pathetic, exposed man. He was trapped, utterly defeated. I looked at him, then at Sarah, not with anger, but with a profound sense of closure. Their secret was out, shattered in the most public way imaginable. After the restaurant chaos, Julian and I walked out, leaving Robert and Sarah to deal with the fallout of their public shaming. We went back to my room. Robert, in a frantic rage, soon found himself pounding on my door, demanding to be let in, demanding an explanation. But I was done. I stood firm. Through the thick hotel door, my voice was calm, clear, and utterly final. "Robert," I said, "it's over. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Don't ever contact me again." There were no tears, no shouts, just a quiet, resolute farewell. Julian stood beside me, a comforting presence, silent but supportive. We walked out of the Grand Plaza, leaving behind the shattered pieces of a deceptive marriage and the ghosts of my past. The fresh New York air felt invigorating, a promise of new beginnings. I pulled up my phone and sent Robert one last, concise message. My life was once a forgotten draft. Now, I will rewrite it. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a declaration of independence. 3 years flew by, each day a new discovery. The divorce from Robert was finalized, surprisingly swift and clean, largely thanks to Julian's PI evidence which expedited the process and ensured a fair settlement. I finally used a portion of that inheritance to enroll in language courses, picking up where I'd left off decades ago. The joy of learning, the thrill of understanding a new culture, was intoxicating. I even started taking on freelance translation projects, my mind buzzing with newfound purpose. My pension from my late mother and a portion of Robert's salary that I'd saved up was also helpful during this time. Julian and I's relationship blossomed organically. It wasn't a rebound, it was a profound connection built on mutual respect, shared vulnerabilities, and a deep understanding of what it felt like to be underestimated. We discovered a mutual passion for travel, but not just sightseeing. We wanted to help others rediscover themselves. So, we founded Renaissance Journeys, a bespoke travel consultation company specifically designed for people over 50 looking to embark on personal Renaissance journeys. We helped them find adventures, learn new skills, and reclaim parts of themselves they thought were lost. Our company thrived. We were busy, happy, and fulfilled. Eventually, Julian and I found our dream home, a charming villa nestled in the hills of Nice, France, overlooking the sparkling Mediterranean Sea. We often hosted friends from the States, sharing stories of our past lives and the incredible journey that led us here. At 57, I was no longer Robert's wife, no longer the silent shadow. I was Melanie. Vibrant, confident, and unapologetically myself. We're planning a simple beach wedding soon, just the two of us, a quiet celebration of a love that was truly earned. I often find myself sitting on our balcony in Nice, sipping my morning tea, watching the sun kiss the Mediterranean. I sometimes glance at an old photo of Robert and me, and I can honestly say there's no bitterness left. Just a faint, almost nostalgic smile. Sometimes, the biggest betrayals are simply the catalysts we need for our greatest breakthroughs. That painful chapter wasn't an ending. It was just a comma, leading to a new, brighter sentence. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I truly hope it resonates with some of you out there. Have you ever faced a similar turning point in your life, where a difficult experience ultimately led you to something better? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you connected with my journey, please give this video a like and subscribe for more stories of reinvention and resilience.